John Cate, Vigilant Digital Security. Appreciate you being willing to talk to me again. AI. We now have it everywhere. It's even made its way into, well, my realm, which is criminal defense. So I'm certain digital forensics, it's infested it. How much do you have to interact with AI today versus 2 years ago?
Well, first of all, when you're talking about AI, that's kind of a buzzword. It's a big, broad category, and people use it to refer to a lot of different systems. So a lot of people are thinking about a chatbot, generative AI that can make images. But AI can refer to neural networks. It can refer to a system that matches hashes to detect images and match them to images in another database. Really, the two categories when it comes to law and digital forensics especially, that it's very important to understand are the difference between probabilistic and deterministic outputs. A deterministic output would be something like a hash matching software that every time you put the same input in, it's going to give you a predictable, reliable, exactly the same output. So that's like doing a math equation, if you want to think about it that way.
Okay.
Certain thing in, certain thing out, it's always the same. A probabilistic output is something like a generative AI or a large language model, like
That'd be like ChatGPT.
Gemini or Copilot or ChatGPT.
Okay.
And that is going to potentially give you a different output and an potentially even unpredictable output compared to what you put in. As you can imagine, from the perspective of digital forensics and something like preparing evidence for court, it's very important that you don't confuse the two and,
Sure.
and use any tools that are generating probabilistic outputs and then treat those as if they were deterministic.
So, for people like me, one of them is just doing an equation and getting you a correct answer, and one of them is guessing. Is that a really simplified way to say it?
Yes, that is a simplified way to say it. But I mean, we're talking about machines that can make very sophisticated, potentially very useful guesses. And in digital forensics now, there definitely is some utility for probabilistic systems.
Sure.
And the way to use probabilistic systems, though, is very different. In a deterministic system, the output can be viewed as evidence. However, in a probabilistic system, the output is not necessarily evidence. The output is just a direction for an actual investigator to go and then do the work. So, to give you an example, I might have 10,000 images in a mobile phone extraction, and I have a probabilistic AI that comes with my forensic software that can look through those images and guess is the right word, which of these images are weapons.
Okay.
It's not going to be right every time. It's going to have false positive, and it might possibly miss weapons. However, it can be a really quick, if you need a lot of times you have 10,000, 100,000, you might have 300,000 images. And it would be great to know right now if there's, for example, a certain kind of gun in a certain kind of context. And the AI can provide that tool to point the investigator in the right direction to say, you should look at this much smaller set of images, but you would never want to present that output as evidence. That would just be an indicator for an investigator to then go and then check and then do that work themselves.
So it might reduce 100,000 photos down to 1,000 photographs, kind of a deal.
Absolutely. Or it might, and it's completely possible, and it has happened before, that you're looking for something very specific.
Okay.
You're not just wondering about any kind of evidence. There's something highly specific that an attorney might be looking for.
Sure.
For example, like, was this person on this day carrying a long rifle? That's an example of a kind of question that you might have. Where if the answer is yes, then it's just yes.
Yeah.
So there's no need to keep looking through the images once you've found the image of the long rifle, and that's an example of how probabilistic AI can be very helpful, even though it's still guessing on some level and you always have to verify its outputs.
Another thing I'm running into, which by definition is going to mean you're running into it since you work with a lot of defense attorneys, is the allegations that evidence is just generated or created, like cell phone messages or text messages. Is there a way, because all the time I'll get a printout, a group of printouts of here's text messages allegedly sent by my client, that weren't provided by the police, but by some random victim who hates my client. Then the allegation becomes, well, are these even real? Is there an easy way to kind of tell this is real, this is from a phone, or this is fake, this is just a printout they made with ChatGPT?
It depends, is my favorite answer. No, authentication is a very interesting and developing space right now in digital forensics and just generally. And it's important to understand how it works and how it does not work.
Okay.
It does not work by looking at an end product, a picture, or a paragraph of text, and then determining based on that output alone with some system to say this was definitively created by an AI or this was definitively created by a human. That's not how it works at all. In fact, that's not even how it works with differentiating human communication.
Okay.
That's not how it works to determine where a text message came from. The way that authentication actually works in digital forensics is you build a reliable, deterministic path from exactly how the communication was created. So I'm not looking at a text message and trying to learn about that text message from that text message. I'm going back into the file system and seeing when was the text message created, how was it sent, how was it received, when was it read, and same thing for an image. I'm going back and looking in the file system and actually seeing this is definitively how it was created,
Sure.
which rules out the other options, and that's how authentication of digital evidence works.
So you could never take just a photo or a printout. You need the phone or at least the digital file.
You don't ever want to say never because there are some signs, and then there are also some signing systems. For example, some AI image generation actually includes either code or a signature of some kind to show that they're basically volunteering to show that their images were created by AI. However, that is highly dependent on a given system, and the only way that I would feel comfortable authenticating a piece of digital evidence is by showing in a reliable way how it was actually created to begin with. And then it's like chain of custody. It was, here's the file system, it created this file, it was handled in this way, it got to this point, and then here is where I extracted it with my forensic extraction software, and now I'm presenting it to the court, and I have the whole story of the life of that file, of that image, of that text. And so it's not a question of me doing the detective work in the reverse. You start at the bottom and you construct the whole tree.
How far are we from AI being good enough that it can defeat the process you just described? I mean, will it ever get to the point that we actually have to have the original cell phone to prove the legitimacy, or do you think you can just keep with just the digital file? Man, we're ahead today, I guess, but...
Well, I'm not going to speculate about what might exist in the future that doesn't exist now, but we can very reliably say how a file was created.
Okay.
And it's not, and I say this rarely and only very specifically about specific things, it is not possible to change a file in a way that we're not going to know that it was changed. Okay. In other words, you can change the file, you can change the ones and zeros, but the way the actual file is created oftentimes is in a way that we're going to know, because again, we have the whole story.
Yeah.
We have where it started and where it wasn't, so we're going to see where it's changed. So even now we're talking about theoretically in this case, even a theoretically highly advanced system, I'm currently not concerned about it contravening digital forensics authentication in the way that you're imagining. Anything is possible, and there's a lot of things new and changing, but that's not a thing that I see on the immediate horizon.
All right, well, I really appreciate you talking to me again. Thank you.